Hello friends, this is Ganesh. Hope you are doing wonderful. Happy to learn together. In this video, I'm going to explain how to handle the values from the screen element. So very basic, how to read it or how to write it. Write the values to the screen elements or how to read it from the screen element. Very basic process we have to learn here. So if you see screen elements compared to ABAP, we have lot of screen elements over here. If you ABAP, we have very limited screen components. I can see like input box button or option buttons, radio button, and how to read the value from those screen components in ABAP perspective. It's pretty simple because every component has its own name, even if it is selection screen or a screen painter. So the name is associated with the screen element. We consider that as a variable. So whatever the value entered by the user at the runtime, the value is stored in that variable. So once it is stored in the variable, we can use it for our own needs. Maybe we can use it in the where condition, or we can manipulate and update in the database table, or we can manipulate and update in the screen level also. So once the value is available in the variable, you can do whatever you want. So here we have some steps to receive the value from the screen element to the variable. Okay, maybe it's a different language we are going to learn, right? So pretty steps, I can say it's not complicated, it's simple, but we have to do some steps. That's all. Okay, so that's why we are going to learn how to read and write very basic things of a value to the screen element. So let's get into the slide first. And today we are going to learn one more new file. So .js file we are going to learn is something like a controller.js file. So where there is a place to write the code, especially to read and write the value to the screen element. So we are going to use a file called controller.js. So far we have learned two different files in our learning process, view.xml and known as manifest.json. So manifest is just for adding an OData service. So for our learning idea, and view is nothing but designer screen. Okay, and the third one is controller.js. The name itself you can say is going to be control something on your UI5 side or on your screen side. So to read and write the values of a screen element, we are going to use the file called controller.js. So we are going to learn one by one. At the end, we come to know what is the use of each file and what we have to do with that each file. Okay, so let's move on with today's simple example. So I have a UI with listed screen elements like button, input box, text, or radio button, whatever it is. So first I need to understand, oh sorry, first I need to read the value of this file. Whatever the user enters, I need to read it, and maybe the next step I want to write it. To the specific screen components, I want to write the values as well. Okay. So now I need a space to write the code for read and write. So for that I'm going to use a space called or a file called controller.js file. So here I'm going to start writing the code which is going to read the value from the screen element and write it to the screen element. Okay, so that is about controller.js. The next one is, so how it is get captured or when it is getting captured. Whenever the user is clicked the save button, I need this code to be written. Whenever the user press enter or whenever there is a change happens in my input field, then events to be triggered. So every screen component has its own events or events. Okay, so if you go to ondemand.com, the help file where you are able to see every component, the events, the associated events, you're able to see that. So you have some default events and you have some borrowed events also. So borrowed events is nothing but it's getting from the different library. Okay, so I will show you the file for a better understanding. So what are the events associated with it? For example, over here I can say select is an event or change is an event. So change is nothing but whenever there is a change happens in the particular input field, the event will be triggered. Okay, so the first thing is you need to find the events which is associated with the screen element. Okay, so here in this file I'm going to use input for under the API reference, and this is my class. Okay, it's loading with the some tabs. I just refer these are some tabs, okay, like overview, fields, constructor properties, and one of the tab as events. Just select it. It will show you what are the events associated with the input screen element. So that is for submit, live change, suggest. So many events are available, and so many borrowed events also available, because this is from input library and this is from input base library. So I'm going to use the event called change. Whenever the input is getting changed in the particular input box, I want that event to be triggered. So you have to find the event first for the related input field or related screen element, then you can just use it whenever you're going to design your screen. Okay. So the next one is, so a few sample events which we are going to use in today's session is for input, it's a change, button, it's a press or tap. So tap is nothing but the tab. Whenever you press the tab, automatically the event triggers. Select and combo box, list box, two different list box. You have a event called change, and switch case, on and off, you have a change. Radio button group, it is spelling mistake, it's radio button group, it says select is a change. Whenever there is a select, it's an event triggers, then automatically that needs to be triggered. Okay, and every event you have to give a name on it. Any name you can give. Normally the best practice, or the, I can say, the naming conventions, the events start with on. Okay, so on change, on okay code, like that. So it's fine. You can give whatever name you want. So for input, maybe I can give on change, on okay code, a list, on and off, RG. So anything you can able to give, but I'm not going to use the same. I can give just name, any name on my event in the design level. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop in this slide to understand. First, we are going to design a screen as well as with the events. Then we're going to write a small message box, or maybe I have one more slide for that. Yeah. A small message box saying that at least the event is getting triggered. I want to understand, yes, if some value changes, yes, the event is getting triggered, I want to understand. So I will show you that first in the system level, then come back to the slide. We'll move forward with the how to read and write the values from the screen element. So to write a code, you have to go to Controller.js. So every view has its own controller. If you have a 10 views in a design, you have a 10 different controllers files are automatically created. Okay, so far we have only one view, so we have a controller which starts with the view name. So view name is view1, then it automatically created a controller file like view1.controller.js. Okay, so that's what you're going to see. And we created with a very simple application, not using any big templates. So a few lines are already available in the .js file. That is fine. So now what I notice inside that, I will show you where we can write it. Inside we are going to give the event name, whatever name you have given for the event, and the same name you have to give is a case sensitive, and the colon and function is a keyword. So you have to give the function and then open and close brackets. Okay, curly braces you have to use, open and close, here you have to write it. And if you have more than one function to be added in the controller, then you have to use comma. So comma separated, which for the every function, okay, every event, I can say. So here you can write a code. So simple code which I'm going to write is I'm going to show a message, a pop-up message. Make sure it's triggered perfectly. So for that, I'm going to use sap.m.messagebox.show. So if you're using a different library, make sure that is also added in your controller.js file. How you're added in the view using XMLNS. So the library name, the same way you have to use it in your controller also. Otherwise, you won't get the values. Like again, you won't get your screen is not going to be triggered or updated. Okay. Okay, now go to the system. So this is my web IDE, and I have created a project already. So same steps whatever we have followed in the previous videos. I have used SAP UI application, not with any master or workless template. So it's an empty project, and I have created some page like view. I have created some view because just time consuming. I don't want to waste your time. So if you execute, it shows some screen elements. So we are going to handle with the screen elements on this session. So input box, button, and list box, and I have a combo box, switch, and radio button. So first option is what I'm going to do is we are going to trigger an event with a message saying that this event is getting triggered properly. For that only we are going to do few additions over in the existing design. And to align properly, this additional point over here, to align properly your code, normally what we do in ABAP Pretty Printer, you have an option called Edit Beautify, Control Alt B. Okay, so once you do it, automatically it will properly align. Normally if you enter, once you start typing it, it won't properly align to your code. If you want a proper one, just use this beautify option. Okay, and now come to the code. So these are the designs which I have already done. I have input field, two buttons, and I have one list box with values, all hard coded. It's not getting anything from my backend. And combo box, one switch, and a radio button with radio button group with three radio buttons. Okay, so this is the design. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start write the code. I mean, code in the sense I'm going to add a event for every screen element. So before that, just walk through the controller.js file. So every view you have a controller.js. If you have 5 views, you are able to see 5 controller.js files started with respective view name. So go here, you're able to see a very limited lines because we used simple UI5 application, not the master, not the work list. If you used those, you'll get a very big coding related to that particular design. So now you have the code over here. So you got to start writing the code between these two. So here you have to start writing your function codes. Okay, even code or whatever it is. Double slash. I'm sorry. Double slash. I'm going to write my own function code or even code, whatever it is. This is command one. Okay. Double slash, or you can use the right click toggle command or toggle block command. So now let's save it. Now go to view. I'm going to add a event. So control space bar, you are able to see the events here. Events start with E. Okay, I think it's in the green color. Yes, that is an event called change. Okay, and if you keep the cursor, it will display some description about what is that. So when it will get triggered and everything. So is fired when the text in the input field has changed and the focus leaves the input field or the enter key is pressed. So either of this happens, then this event gets triggered. Okay. So any other event? So okay, formatter error you have, live change you have. Okay, 1 minute. Okay, it's a rental, so remote desktop, so I have to go a little slow. Okay, so live change, this event is fired when the value of the input is changed, example at each key press. Okay, so whenever there is a key press happens in the particular event, there is slighter change with change and live change event. Okay, so these are some events which are available. So today we are going to see with change event. Enter. Okay, or if you find, you can start typing it. Okay, and give some names. This is for input, right? So I can say input event. Little relevant to understand now, but in real time you have to give whatever naming conventions required. Okay, so change is an input event. Let me do a small code in controller for this input and we can run how it behaves. Then in one stretch we can write all, we can add the events for all other components and write the same in the controller file also. Okay, so this is done and saved it. So let me copy this. It's case sensitive. Okay, let me copy this and go to your controller file. So here just paste it and colon. Here use a keyword called function. Open close bracket. So it's very common and from C we have to use it. If it is a function, obviously you need open and close bracket. And open parenthesis and close parenthesis, write a code. So here I'm going to write a code. There is no double quotes, just give the event name over here. And here I'm going to use sap dot m dot message box, yeah, dot running the message. So here the message is input event got triggered. So just ignore my spelling mistakes. Okay, that's it. And one more thing to be added is I'm going to use a library sap.am.message box, which is not defined in Controller.js. So normally in a view also, if you want to use any property coming under a different library, you have to use in this way, right? The same thing in Controller also you have to use it, but it's a different format. Here everything is slash, no dot, and within double quotes. So here I'm going to use sap/m/message box. I want to use it. Okay, and this is separated by comma. But view is not separated by comma, it's separated by space. Little different depends on the file which you are using. Just make sure you are following the same way. I think hope this might trigger my event. Let's see. Okay, and here 1, 2, 3 tab. Yes, so input event got triggered. So whenever event got input means tab, or I can say 4 enter. Yes, it got triggered. Okay, so this is a way you have to write the code, means create an event for any component and write a code in your JS file also. So now very quick, I'm going to add an event for every screen element. Okay, so here this is called press. So you can use control space bar, but I don't want to go very deeply because it's very it's a repeated step I had to do it. So press, I can say button event. So for a uniformity, I'm going to use all small cases. Okay, and here also press. You can have same event, means even event, meaning maybe I can classify inside the particular event. I can write some more code to understand which button is getting triggered. And for select, I have to use change as an event. So this is select event. This is for list. And combo box, I'm going to use change equal to CB event. And for switch, I'm going to use change. So change as this is called SWIT, switch event. Okay, and for radio button is select as an event. Maybe I can show you in the control. Select. So select is an event. It's not a change. Here select is an event. Selected and give a name on it. Radio button group event. Okay, so that's it. This is a way you have to add an event for every screen element. Now I'm going to capture it in my controller.js. So here, copy this, go here, and here separated by comma, event name. Okay, and then function, open and close bracket, open parenthesis. So this is the way you have to do this. So I'm going to do copy paste, and maybe I can give a pause here because I'm going to do the same for every event. So button event got triggered. Okay, so it's additional one, deleted. Okay, no comma. So let me copy paste for every event, give a pass. Let me copy paste and come back and show you for all the events how I have written the message over here. Okay, so here you go. I have added button event, select event, combo box event, switch event, and radio button event. So everything is have written. Oh, I just copy pasted it. 1 minute. Let me change the statement. Okay, so here you go. So I changed the message, proper message. Let's go here, give a refresh. So this is already done. 1, 2, 3. Yes, input event triggered, button event trigger. So both are pointing to the same event. So both buttons. And here if there is any change happens, yes, select event got triggered. And here also if any change happens, combo box event got triggered. Switch switch event got triggered, and the radio button is got radio button got triggered. Okay, so this is a way you have to make sure at least the events are in place and it reaches to the controller.js file and it triggered whatever inside the controller. Okay, so now we are going to understand how to read and write the values to the particular screen components. It has a different methods to be added because everything here is a method. Okay, so first we are going to understand from the concept perspective how we are going to do it. So we'll get back to the slides now. Yeah, so here we stopped, right? So this is a controller. Yeah, so now methods. That is very important for an ABAPer to understand what are the methods are available. So every screen element has its own method or methods, probably is more than one only. So we need to identify which method is apt or relevant for the business scenario. Okay, even to read a value we need a method, to write a value we need a method. This is quite interesting, or it's quite different for an ABAPer, because for us to write a value, simply we are saying variable equal to value, it automatically goes to the variable, and if you use a variable in a screen it reflects in the screen. To read the variable, so to read the value, whatever the variable is associated with the screen element, once the user enters, automatically reads the value to the variable level. But here to read the value from the screen component to the variable, we need a method. Okay, so quite interesting here. So for our inputs, I'm going to use very basic, that's what I'm saying, initial learning, very basic method I'm using over here. To read the value, I'm going to say get value. Okay, to write the value, I'm going to use a method called set value. Here everything is case sensitive, so here also the method names, you can see the value vcaps, here also value vcaps is case sensitive. And for a button, I'm going to use two different, because I'm not going to get value of the button, right? I want to know what is the source, what is the ID of the button, because two buttons are going to trigger. So based on that, I want to capture it. Maybe you can have a different event, that's different story, but I want to introduce some methods in this session. So that's what I'm going to use. Get source and get ID. So here I is capital. And for a select and drop down for both, I'm going to use get selected mode. For the select, I'm going to use get selected item. Okay, whatever item is get selected, I want to get that one. For that, I'm going to use a method called get selected item, SNI caps, and get text, get value. And I want to get the value, what is the state, like instead of get value, for a switch you want to use get state. So both methods are going to give a functional device, it could be same, but get value, get the value of the input, get status, what is the state of it, it is on or off, that we are going to receive from this method. And radio button group, you have to use I think this is swapped. Radio button group. It's not radio group button. Something happened today. That's fine. Get selected button and get text, get parameter. Okay. So these are the methods which I'm going to use in this particular screen element. So the idea behind this is, if you want to handle, if you want to do something, even if it's a very basic thing, read and write, you need a method, you need to identify the method. So maybe again ondemand.com, after the events you're able to see one more tab called methods. The relevant methods for the particular screen elements also listed over there. You can go and identify what are the relevant methods are available, which is mapped with your business requirement. The next one is get the reference. It's very important, but it's very simple. Meaning everything is object oriented, right? Once you start writing the Java or JavaScript, everything is related to the object oriented concepts. So first get the reference of your screen element. So for example, I want to read the value of an input field. I need to get reference of the input field. So you can't directly get the input field, right? So input field is associated with the view. Okay, view is associated with the project. So you have to get the reference in the sequence. Okay, for an input field, you have to get the view first and you have to get the current project. Okay, so normally they use a method, or I can say is a keyword, or what do you call that one? So operator. Okay, so they are using a this operator. This represents the current one. Okay, so that is the operator they used to get the reference of anything. So for example, now Um, okay, before that, this is the screen which I'm going to use for our continuous for this particular session. So here I'm going to get the value of this input field and I'm going to keep it in the another input field. So this input field or disabled, the property I make it as enable is false, so it's disabled. So whatever is doing here, I'm going to get the value in this particular input field. So I'm going to read it, write it here. I'm going to read the button value or button ID, I'm going to write it here. I'm going to read the text, write it here. I'm going to read the combo box, write it here. The state and then option button. And this is actually a multiple input box, because why I use a multiple input box is this needs an array concept, because multiple input box means the values are more than one. So these here everything values is only one, it's fine, but here more than one value. So I need to show you how you're going to get means read those values and how you're going to push it to the other screen element. So these are the sample screen which I'm going to use for this process. Okay, so now come back to the get reference. So here what I'm going to do is inside for this also event everything in place now, Controller.js, we have a message box. We are going to comment that particular line. I'm going to add this here. So I'm going to get the value of my screen element. So what you need is first you need use this operator dot get view, get the reference of the view, and I need to get the ID, which ID I want, because every screen element has its own ID. Whatever ID you have mentioned, that is one, or by default it has its own ID. So we have to get the reference of the screen element using the method called by ID. I is capital. And then once you get the reference of the screen element, what do you want? You want a get value, or you want a set value, or something you want to perform. So based on that, the method to be determined. So I want to get the screen element, I want to get the value of the screen element, so I have to write this code. So this dot get view as a method, get the reference of the view and get which screen element, get the reference of the particular screen element, and from there get the value of the screen element. So once you get it, automatically it goes and place it in a variable. So in here the variable declaration start with var, var, it's again it's a keyword, you can see it's in blue color. So var, and the variable name you can give whatever name you want. Okay, so this is one way of reading the value. So another way, so not another way, another process is I want to set the value to the particular variable. So what happens is sorry, not particular variable, set the value to the screen element using that variable. Okay, so this example, read the value from input 1, write the value to input 2, whatever value is entered here. Okay, so further what I am going to do is again this dot get view dot by ID of screen element, maybe I can say input 1, input 2. Okay, get this reference of input 2 because I want to write the value over there. So input 2 and set value of whatever I read here, I'm going to use it. Maybe you can hard code also, just hard code it, that will be go and place in the screen element. So this is the basic way of reading, getting the reference of the screen element, and using two different methods you can perform get and set the value to the screen element. Okay, anything else? No, nothing. So we are going to use the same with different methods. It depends on the screen element. Every screen element has its own method, so different methods also we are going to use it. Okay, let's get into the system now. So here I have done the other project, the output of the project only I showed you in the PPT. So I'm going to read one screen element and I'm going to keep it the same value in the another screen element. The same way I have designed it is not a big deal. So here if you go to the view, yeah, I can use a beautify here because it's not properly aligned. So let me go here and click this option. Yeah, it's done. Okay, save it and execute. Yeah, it's look like this. I'm going to read the value of this input field and I'm going to keep it here. And there are two buttons and this is going to be display which one got selected and what are the options is getting here and on and off, which option button is selected. Maybe I can use an if condition. If option 1 is selected, what is that? Option 2 is selected. What could be the next message or next process that also we're going to see. And here we have a multiple input box, and I'm going to gather all the values whatever I entered from this screen element. I'm going to display all the three or all the two, whatever it is. I'm going to display in this input field with the help of an array concept. Okay, let's get into the code, and as usual we are going to get the first one. Okay, I'm going to read the value of this input and keep it in the another input value. So here you can see I introduced a new one called panel. I used just, I want to keep everything in, it's kind of a box. So I used a panel for one input component and the relevant input field. So the input field value is input value. That is very important because by ID we are going to recognize the reference of the screen element. So that is very important. ID is very important. And button also, you can see there is an input box that is called button value, and for here it's a select value. So everywhere I have added one additional input field to keep the value of the relevant screen element. Okay, so that's what over here, and I have added the multi input option also. So let's go to the first one, input, and I need the check. It's a C, it's a capital. So here this is already developed, okay, along with the name of the event. So maybe a different name, that's fine. And go to controller. So you know where to write and what. Check function, open and closed parenthesis. And here I'm going to use I'm going to read it first. Read input value in value, whatever name if you want you can give. This dot get view, and by ID, what is the ID name? So ID name is inputs. I is capital. So I want to read the value of the screen element. Put it here and dot get value. Simple. And there's a warning message meaning this variable is not at all used. So it's there, but it's never been used. Okay, that's fine. I'm going to use it now. So here I'm going to use this dot get view by ID. This is one of the way I'm saying, okay, to read and write. We have, I mean, script have different options to read the values. We'll see one by one. And the next one, I believe it's the input value. Let me just cross verify that. Set value of the variable. If you want give a hard coded value, give a hard coded value, but I have a variable, so I'm using that. Okay, complete. Let's see how it works. So now I'm going to execute this, and 1 2 3, press enter or tab. Fine, it's not copy here. Could be ID input value. Let me check. 1 minute. Input value V is, so V is not capital. Okay, save it. Go here, refresh. 1 2 3, tab. So it's populating here. So that triggers here. So whatever I entered and whatever value changes, it's automatically read and keep it in this particular input output box. Same thing we are going to do for other screen elements. So here the option is I have two buttons, but I have only one input screen element. So I want to know which button is it gets selected, which get clicked. Okay. So for that we are going to use, go to view. What is that? On press. So both are going to have the same function or same event handler, whatever it is. Go here and continue, comma. Why this is coming here? Delete. Okay. So here we don't want a value. We need which one gets selected. Function and close brackets. And here we need to get the value, not a value, you need to identify which button is getting selected, not the value of the button. It's not required. So what are you going to introduce here? A small variable. We'll explore more about this. So the time being, you can keep that as kind of a event or variable, whatever it is. Okay, or it's a kind of a parameter. It is a function. It's kind of a parameter. With the help of the parameter, I'm going to get variable button selected. It's nothing but not a even dot get source dot get id. Okay, so here we have to explore more libraries and more methods which is relevant for our function need or our need, okay, for the business requirement. So here then I'm going to display the whatever is selected. So this dot get view dot by id. So I have an input field for the button press. That's nothing but button value. So let me copy this. So there is no id in the button. Okay, just notice that also. I didn't give any name or any id for the button. Set value of whatever is coming in this variable. Okay, go here, execute. The first one anyway is done. Select is button 0 and the select button 1. Okay, so the ID is not populated, not given in the design level, but it's recognized button 0 and button 1. So based on this value, you can further writing the code with the help of if statement. If it is button 0, do this. If it is button 1, do that. Okay, so that is a way you're able to get which button is getting selected with the different methods called get source and get ID. And the next one is what do you call list box. We call it a select. If the select, automatically I need to copy this particular value and keep it here. Okay, so for that I need a different method. ID is select and change is yes. Okay, yes is the event name. Go here. So it's coming down. Okay, comma s function. Okay, so here also I need a variable and this is for list value. So this dot get view and then by ID. So what is the ID? So ID is select, I believe. Yeah, CLET select and this is select value. Okay, and here we need to get the value, not a value, you need to identify which button is getting selected, not the value of the button. It's not required. So what are you going to introduce here? A small variable. We'll explore more about this. So the time being, you can keep that as kind of a event or variable, whatever it is. Okay, or it's a kind of a parameter. It is a function. It's kind of a parameter. With the help of the parameter, I'm going to get variable button selected. Is nothing but not a even dot get source dot get id. Okay, so here we have to explore more libraries and more methods which is relevant for our function need or our need, okay, for the business requirement. So here then I'm going to display the whatever is selected. So this dot get view dot by id. So I have an input field for the button press. That's nothing but button value. So let me copy this. So there is no id in the button. Okay, just notice that also. I didn't give any name or any id for the button. Set value of whatever is coming in this variable. Okay, go here, execute. The first one anyway is done. The select is button 0 and the select button 1. Okay, so the ID is not populated, not given in the design level, but it's recognized button 0 and button 1. So based on this value, you can further writing the code with the help of if statement. If it is button 0, do this. If it is button 1, do that. Okay, so that is a way you're able to get which button is getting selected with the different methods called get source and get ID. And the next one is what do you call list box. We call it a select. If the select, automatically I need to copy this particular value and keep it here. Okay, so for that I need a different method. ID is select and change is yes. Okay, yes is the event name. Go here. So it's coming down. Okay, comma s function. Okay, so here also I need a variable, and this is for list value. So this dot get view, and then by ID. So what is the ID? So ID is select, I believe. Yeah, select, select, and this is select value. Okay, select, and there is a method called get selected item, and then from there I have to get the text. I'm going to get the text of it. Okay, and you may wonder whether can we use this as a global reference. Probably we can do it. We'll see. It's quite later. Means we can keep, because every time you don't want to get a reference, we can do that. We'll explore more on this also. And here this dot get view by ID select value dot set value of list value by ID, and this is going to be the select value. Okay, so it's not a hard coded one, it's a variable, so it should not be in double quotes. List value. Okay, execute, and option 2